figured I'd make a video. I was like going back and forth whether or not to make a video, and then I was just talking to myself, and I was like, I don't know why I'm not just recording at this point. So I don't know if this is gonna be a part 1, part 2, blah, 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 but I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, and what got me on the topic was driving by a previous workplace of mine, and then I was like, damn, man, that job sucked. Like, the job that I have now is arguably my favorite job, if not when I was getting deployed. But that's getting ahead of myself. That job that I just went by was only there for a week, and I fucking hated my life. I mean, there was a point there that I think I just had bananas all day, and then I ended up finding out I was allergic to bananas. And I was on the toilet for like 20 minutes because I was so constipated. It was pretty scary, actually. Too much information on that one. But I just remember hating my life at that job. Absolutely. It was very dreadful. No product was getting out of the fucking out of the store. It was a shipping and receiving job, and I just fucking hated it. But then I was like, let me think about the jobs that I have had. Like, what jobs are the best? What jobs have been the worst? And I started working when I was, I think, maybe 15 or 16. Right around that age. I was, I think, a freshman when I started. I could be wrong though. I might have been a sophomore. But yeah, I think I was a sophomore. So I think I was there like 2 years, or 2.5. It was something. I think it was 2.5 or something. Maybe a little bit more. I don't really know. But when I was at Hannafords, I worked with my brother. I worked with my buddy Brian and my buddy Mike and a few other buddies. I have memorable moments there. I was a total nerd back then. I was playing laser tag, and just having my buddies over playing D&D. I wasn't really getting anywhere in life. No shame to anyone who's just working in grocery stores, but it wasn't my goal to do that. And then my buddy Evan, and I brought this story up before, but he was the one who got me into the military. Without him, I don't think I would have ever joined. Who knows? I don't know where I'd be. But he was like the defining reason I joined. So I remember Hannafords, and I'm gonna give it like a B. I'm honestly gonna give Hannafords a B because I had memorable times there. It was close to home. It was the perfect first job. I couldn't ask for a better first job because it acquainted me to Express, like the Express checkout, which was not the best, but it made me realize that there was pros and cons to each job early on. Because when you were just out in carriages, even in the winter or in summer, it was like you're out in carriages, like it's the easiest thing ever. So Hannafords, I'm gonna give a B. I'm not gonna say the military was a job until I was getting paid for National Guard full time, so that comes later. My second job was Jordan's Furniture. My boss was a dick. He always called me a retard, and just all the names, he just didn't understand my brain, and I don't really blame him, but he could have been nicer, but whatever. I just remember he was a dick. So kind of my first run-in with like an actual dick at a job, because Hannafords didn't really do that. They'd be like assholes or whatever, but like he was the first one who I was like, oh my god, dude, he's just dreadful. And that was after the military, so that says a lot. He's just kind of like sergeants are sergeants and drill sergeants are drill sergeants. So I never put them in the same category as like their dick. I was just like, that's their job. But this guy was just a dick. At Jordan's, I filled like the batteries. I remember a lot of battery acid would ruin my fucking shorts, my pants. I would have to get on my fucking back and clean out the big squeegee mobile. I had 2 squeegee mobiles. I remember my buddy Evan, the one who got me into the military, he ended up working at that job. I think in a different department. But we ended up chilling, drinking a lot. I remember all my coworkers weren't bad. One guy kept on making fun of me because I was in the National Guard. But, you know, a lot of those guys, I'm always like, you know, just strange people, man. When you make fun of someone's branch, it's a strange like thing in their brain. And yeah, I quit this job because I was in school full time and I was just kind of a pansy and I couldn't do both at the same time. Big regret of mine. I wish that I just stuck it through and got a degree. But at the same time, I probably wouldn't have got the degree that I'm in now. So good and bad, you know. When I quit this job, I was bumming around for a while until I worked at Farmers Outlet in Lakeville, Taunton. And that job, I was like a really big bum. One of the most depressed I've ever been. Had plans to, you know, off myself, and none of them went through. I'm still around, but this is where I met my wife. You know, we end up going on dates, and it just kind of blossomed very unknowingly. So, oh, and Jordan's, I'd probably give like a C plus, or B minus. It's right around there. This job, I'd probably give like. I met my wife here, so that's huge, and will always be remembered for that. But this job, I was a complete bum as well. I'd probably give this like a C, because I was just drinking all the time, and then when I met my wife, like I still was drinking. I was just kind of like just a general bum at this job. My next job was, so yeah, I'd probably give it a C. My next job was one of my least favorites, fair warning. I would probably say this was probably my second least favorite job. I was here for about 5 or 6 months. It was called High Point. It was a garbage ass job where they put me in different units, like the adult unit, the kids unit, whatever. I remember that the kids were just treated terribly. The adults were treated terribly. All they had were it was a mental like health unit. All they had was like these little like fruit punch or something, watermelon, maybe cherry, like little Italian ice cups. That's like all they could eat with like little with peanut butter. It was just terrible. The whole thing was just terrible, and I think that's like nationwide. Like some of these units are just, you don't want to be in. Like I was in an inpatient unit at one point, and it was literally like this job, where you have no rights and you just wait for your meds, and it's like a psych ward. It's just terrible. I remember I would just like, you know, kind of look out for the kids because they had it terrible, and they were just, I don't want to go into the stories of what they went through. Obviously that's confidential to them, but yeah, it was just in all regards a terrible job. This is also where I found out that I was going to get deployed. So that was terrible news, and terrible and good. I was kind of looking forward to it, honestly, but being early on in a relationship with my wife, you know, it's dreadful news. But I would have either had to go, you know, 2 years or a year or 2 years from then. So High Point, the only pro was that it was close to home. And this was a time where my wife worked opposite hours as well. So we just never saw each other. But this, yeah, you know what? It was fucking terrible. It was terrible. This one of my least favorite jobs. Just terrible. I would give it a D. yeah, I would give it a D. Yeah. Man, I've had so many jobs too. Oh, you know what? I think that these guys are. I think the trash is full over there, so I'm just gonna have to throw this in my trunk. Yeah, but I will continue this video. Don't worry about that. All right, here we go with part 2 of my video with talking about my favorite jobs, my least favorite jobs, just my job history altogether. And I believe I left off with High Point. Oh man, that was a riggedy wreck. That was crazy. There we go. That's better. It always fucking just shuffles back and forth like crazy right there. Oh yeah, I recognize that guy. But yeah, left off on High Point. Gave that place a D. Of course I did. That place was a bunch of junk. And I had my reasons. I didn't get along with the staff. The hours were crazy. The mistreatment of both the adult unit and the kids unit was pretty ridiculous. The only pro was that it was really close to home. It was literally like maybe, like as far as a walk, maybe 10 minutes. And that, even then it might be a stretch. So the walk was wicked nice. Of course I drove, and it took me 2 minutes to get to work. And then at that same time I would leave my house and go pick up my wife, or leave work on my break and go pick up my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. And yeah, that was crazy, because that was like, I forgot what time that was, but I think I went into work at like 4, and then I took my break kind of early, and then I would pick her up, and then she would just be at my house until I got home at like midnight. So it was crazy work, and really just it's there for probably my least favorite job, but then there's one that ranks higher than that as far as my least favorite. So then my next job was getting ready for deployment, and I'll just do getting ready for deployment and deployment kind of all in one, because getting ready for deployment, I believe I started in July or August. I would say August. And it was, at that time, it was the in-between between when I quit High Point and I didn't have a job. So it really sucked because I didn't have a job. So like, I really depended on other people. I didn't have any money coming from anywhere. I did drills, so sometimes I would get money that way. And then I went on orders for like 2 weeks, because I was like, yeah, I can't find a job. And they, my like guard unit helped me out and said, here's some more money to, like here's orders for like 2 weeks just to get you some pocket money. So that was good. But then they like said, hey, there's an opportunity in Westfield. You can do full time, but it was in Westfield, and I lived in Middleborough at the time, so that was like a 2-hour drive. So that was pretty nuts, like doing a 2-hour drive every day. So 4 hours altogether. It was 2 hours there, 2 hours back. So I put a lot of miles on my leased car, and yeah, I put so many miles on my leased car. At the same time, I was, getting ready for deployment. I was coming home sometimes, sleeping there sometimes, all depended. And that was really the bad side of the job was, luckily it was only 4 days a week, and it was 10-hour shifts. And I forgot what days I worked. I feel like I worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but I could have worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I forgot now. But the work was not bad. The work was probably the easiest job I've ever had. Again, it was flight operations to like the minimal degree. Like, it was only when the active, like when the medevac guys and the crew chiefs like all combined, that's when that's when we did it. So you know, they did night flights. Sometimes we would have to work nights, like we would switch shifts and work nights, and that's sometimes when I would sleep there because I wouldn't be getting out until like, it was like 12 to 10, so I wouldn't have been getting home until like midnight. So I ended up not doing that. It was so awesome surprising my wife sometimes, like getting out of work and coming to see her. That was so cool, like just surprising her. And yeah, it was just it was awesome, man. Like, it was awesome. You know, it was awesome work. It was fulfilling. I was running with a guy who had lost a lot of weight, who was a really good runner, who run marathons. So I was running with him. I was working out with people who were professional bodybuilders. So it was really good. And then deployment, you know, obviously has pros and cons. You know, away from my wife, you know, the after effects of all that. This guy's going crazy for no reason. Looks like Karen too. That's wild. But yeah, deployment was deployment. So if I'm gonna add Westfield deployment, the drive, being away from my wife, but easy work, I would give that job a B. You know, if it wasn't such a long drive and the risk of like multiple deployments, like if I was active doing that, then if that was just a job and I had, like, if it was just literally just a job, then I would have stayed there for the rest of my life. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They gave like everyone a 2-hour fucking lunch, where you could just go to the gym and shit. That was like when I was in Westfield. It was just prime. It was so nice. And then deployment. And then when I got home from deployment in 2018, I had some time off, and I wish I didn't have that time off because I was just like a complete bum. Like, some people justify it by being like, you just went on deployment, like, say, take some time off. But like, I think like for me, it would have been better just to get right back into the workforce. And I took quite a long time off. Like, I got home in like January 10th, and then I took from January 10th all the way until like May or June. I think May. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4 months off. It's crazy. And obviously we were just living off the deployment money, which was good money at the time, you know. And we got an apartment at that time. My wife and I finally lived on our own. My wife had lived on her own before, but you know, for me it was a big jump. We moved to Taunton. Yeah, it was not bad. And we really, you know, that was a time that I was like, just definitely not the best husband, just because, and I don't want to get personal, you know, like, I'm not gonna delve into that one, but I just wasn't the best husband. I mean, I was a bum, so you know, that affected it. And then I worked at a place called Senior Metal Bellows in Sharon, Mass, and I did that job for 4 years. That was like, I think my longest tenure at a job was 4 years. And that job wasn't terrible. Honestly, that job was top 3 because the benefits were good. It was pretty easy work, especially when I worked at the press / coiler. That was like, I was just good at it. Make mistakes here and there, but I was pretty good. Consistent, and I could listen to my own music, which was different for me. And yeah, I could just kind of zone out. And I watched a lot of like Rome podcasts, listened to a lot of like Dark Souls lore. Yeah, it was not bad work. It was pretty close to home, only like a 20-25 minute commute. I didn't really get along with my coworkers. Some of them I did was like 50-50 with that job. But I would give that job a B. It's pretty good benefits, decent time off. I was there for 4 years. So there's something to say about that. They allowed me to go to college and like take some time off and come in early or stay late. So there was, you know, bending around that. It had a decent walk area around it. Yeah, it wasn't bad. 215s. And again, I was there for 4 years. So, you know, at that time, the wife and I moved to a condo, and then we moved to a house. All at that time, we were just kind of like, oh my God, this is miserable. Just because the wife and I just knew that Taunton/Stoughton, Randolph just was not our vibe. We moved in with her parents at the time as well. So there was a bunch of moving. So moving from the apartment to a condo, from the condo to her parents, from her parents to the Stoughton Randolph place. So we moved 4 times in 4 years. And yeah, we just knew that Mass was not our place. We had outgrown it. We had a lot of bad memories there. So we, you know, from there we decided to move to from North Carolina. And we didn't do research into North Carolina. We just we're like, yeah, we'll just kind of pick this. And yeah, that definitely had its pitfalls, which I will get to when I make the next video. This actually took me a little bit faster than I thought to get to my destination right now. So I will see you guys real soon and make my the third part of this tier list, or, you know, grading list. So appreciate you guys. All right, part 3 to the video. Yeah, so I left off with senior, and then moving to North Carolina. So when I went to North Carolina, it was kind of a huge mistake for a lot of reasons. One huge pro was I had a lot of time with my wife. We had a lot of time to be able to spend together. And that was definitely the huge pro, especially when we first got there. It was a lot because I think the wife and I both kind of suffered a bout of depression. I didn't have a job anymore. My wife was working her business with Fashion Lounge, and it was a difficult time for us. It was a difficult time before. It was a difficult time during. You know, nothing really changed. Nothing changed. Change of location, but I was out of a job. I mean, it was huge. I wish I knew now what I wish I knew now what I knew then. Is that the right fucking term? Completely. But I could have went 100% disability and really just worked better off that. You know, not having a job, and then possibly go into that for that time that I wasn't employed. Sorry, pick my nose, sucker. But yeah, that was just a very difficult time. Eventually, like many suckers that existed in the North Carolina, Wilmington area, and beyond, I think pretty much all eastern North Carolina was plagued by this terrible business. They were Best Choice Roofing, and I saw them. It's funny, I know when I'm about to say something that I like carrying myself back, and you'll see it in my way sometimes I word things. But I did this company, and I saw them on Indeed, and I really needed a job. And so this was one of the only jobs. Oh my God, I had another job too. Oh my, I totally forgot. they were one of the only ones that gave me an interview, and that meant a lot, obviously, because I'd gone without an interview for a long time. I think for the whole month that I was there, when my little brother was like, that day that he was leaving, or like close to it, maybe a little after that he left, I lined up this job interview. I went in. They were saying it was commission based, with a little bit of money that you'd make every hour, especially for training. But it was something better than nothing. At the time, I thought that. But this job was terrible, man. This job, they made you feel like a complete piece of shit if you didn't sell anything, which I was not good at selling anything. I just knew what kind of deal this was. I ended up learning that it was a pyramid scheme. Just terrible. It was plagued with other, roofing companies. You had to go fucking door-to-door salesman. So I did that for, I don't even know, I think like 3 or 4 months. I was getting on people's roofs. A lot of people gave me snarky ass comments. You only made money if you sold something. I only sold one thing, and then they were trying to also not give me the money that I was due. And I had to call corporate and get the money that I was due because I sold the fucking house and I did all the fucking legwork. And then they were trying to say that they already cashed the check, and I was like, give me my fucking money. First time I dealt with that. Just all through and through a terrible company. I don't really think I have any fond memories besides working with a dude named Ammo and him driving me around and showing me some locations because he was like a local there. That was pretty memorable. But other than that, fuck all of that. That was terrible. Terrible. That was my least favorite job I've ever had. Worse than being spit on at the mental hospital. Worse than, everything that amounted to. This was the worst job I've ever had. I give it a pure F. I think after 4 months, I only made maybe $1,200, and really, and they didn't pay for gas, they didn't pay for anything, so everything was on your own dollar. That was absolutely terrible. Damn, man, yeah, I just hated that job, man. I hated my life then because the hours were crazy. I was out on the road, not making any money, just coming home being like, wow, like I just spent like $25-30 in gas, and I didn't get anything for it. Felt very low. Didn't have the energy because it was just a very taxing job, getting on people's roofs and doing all that shit with the mental toll of not making any money. Terrible, man. F, right on the bottom of the list. My next job was at like a nuclear facility. I forgot what. It's a huge company. But they were working for the company. So it wasn't exactly the company, but they worked for the company. I totally forgot what the fucking place was called. Incredibly goofy. They had my computer didn't work and the name didn't work, so I would go in for training, and then they'd be like, yeah, you can't do anything because something's messed up on a higher level. So I was doing training for like a week and a half, just coming in, not getting anything done. Everyone was going into their shifts. I was just stuck there. I was like, this is terrible, man. It was like a weird, like 32-hour, get it done as quick as possible, and then you can move on. And I was just there. Everyone left. I was just in a dark room looking at a computer screen, not being able to do anything. And once that was done, once like the week and a half was done, I ended up going to my like full-on location, and it was terrible, man. It was third shift, and they didn't fit my gas mask right. If you know anything about gas masks, you can't have a beard. They don't seal on correctly. So when they sealed me, I had a beard, and I knew right then. I was like, I even brought it up. I was like, dude, this just won't work. And they're like, nah, like you're good. And I was like, dude, that's crazy. Like it's not sealed. I've worn gas masks in the past. Like I know what it feels like to be sealed. But it wasn't sealed. That was terrible. And then I was working with like uranium deposits that was in dust particle form, and I was breathing that shit in. Not to mention all my burn pit experience, not to mention all my Jordan's furniture shit that was going on as well. It was mostly the burn pits, you know, from deployment that really fucked up my lungs. But this didn't help, you know, this just fucking exacerbated it. And I only did that for one shift, and the guy training me was just miserable. He hated it. He was like a guy who'd bounce from like different locations through the states, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm leaving, you're gonna be on third shift. And I was like, oh my god, dude. And then I remember being so I was so dreading like the aspect of working there for an extended period of time. And the uranium and the gas mask just pissed me off, and I just left, and I never returned to that job. So that was about 10 days, and I was quickly out of there. So then I applied for different places in North Carolina. It didn't work out. None of it worked out. And the wife and I decided to take a risk and look at jobs in New Hampshire. And we were kind of running out of money at the time. You know, we still had some money, but we were really cutting it close with making a decision to either stay in North Carolina and work for a place called Lowe's. Not Lowe's like the, you know, the big business store, but like Lowe's, the grocery store that's like local in North Carolina and some southern states. And that was going to pay $16 an hour, and that was a negotiated pay as well. North Carolina has a smaller, you know, pay rate. So I was like, dude, I will definitely work there. It was in the dairy department. I was like, this is a job, you know, like I will work that, and I will work that. Of course I will. But it was also one of those things where I'm like, once I work that, like, we're stuck here, and we're not going to be able to go to New Hampshire. And everything was just kind of crumbling at that point. It was very like, everything was on like shaky ground, just because we had to make a huge choice. We were running out of money. Yeah, it was just fucking dreadful. Pure, just dread had taken over my life at that point. And then we made some calls, we made some interviews. I was like, let's play this smart. I'm gonna do all the interviews. I'm gonna do as many as I can do on phone, and I'm gonna take a trip to to New Hampshire. It won't cost a crazy amount of money because I can live with my brother at the time. So I was like, I'll live with my brother. We won't have to pay for a hotel. I can do a trip down there. Everything will be paid for. My dad was gonna give me his car to drive around. Everything was all set. So I lined up a bunch of phone interviews. I lined up a bunch of interviews, and my days were scheduled where it was like two or three interviews in person each day, and we had to line up an apartment while we were there too. So I had to do a bunch of apartment tours. I had to make calls there. So once I got there, it was interview, a paper place. Man, I forgot all the interviews, but there was a place called Marmon that was going to give me $24 an hour for like an operator. They liked my experience as senior, where I did machine operation, but it was different. One was wire operation, one was like press operation, so it wasn't the same. But they didn't know that, and I didn't really know what the job was going to entail. So, but the whole time I was doing and then we lined up the apartment because they were like, no, and I went to a terrible apartment, and then this apartment gave me a call back because they were like, we don't allow dogs. And then a guy named Jay gave me a call back, and he was like, we do allow dogs. He's like, you just need to do the emotional support like paperwork and get it through a therapist. And so we did all that, and we lined up everything. And then when I was at one of the apartment tours, Marmon gave me a call back because I got some like offers while I was there, But Marmon gave me a call back. They were like $24 an hour, day shift, and I was like, I can't say no to that. Like, you know, I have to say yes. Like, that's the best offer so far. It's a day shift. Yeah, perfect. So line that up. And then, like I said, Jay said the apartment was ready. I gave a tour for that. We lined up everything before I came back to North Carolina. So I had the job, I had a start date. Then we moved, we got a U-Haul, moved back to New Hampshire. And we drove all day. We came back, I had some days off to get situated, then, you know, would start. And we've been in New Hampshire ever since. We love it here. Way more than Mass, way more than North Carolina. You know, this is the place for us. So, yeah, we finally got back to, you know, somewhere that we were like, okay, we can actually kind of start being steady again. I have a job finally. And when I started Marmon, they were training me in because what was happening is we were going to go to a different location in Hooksett, and they wanted to train everyone. There was like, I think like 6 or 7 of us, and they wanted to train everybody in order to go to this new facility, and have us like be jack of all trades. So when we did that, I just did not catch on. Like, it was a job that it was very difficult for me, and when they put me in shipping and receiving, I got along with everyone. Everyone was like, oh, you know, at first I was like, oh my, like nobody I got along with. But then, you know, we all started kind of getting along. And then I was there for like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, because I was loving it. And usually they only kept me at like for 2 weeks, but I think I was there for 3 weeks. And I was like, dude, shipping and receiving is sick. Like, I want to stay here. And then I talked to my bosses, and they kind of knew that I was like in a way struggling with what I was doing, otherwise. So they were like, you know, sounds good. Like, we'll put you over in shipping and receiving. And it was turmoil just because there was so much moving pieces to get me over to shipping and receiving. But the team did it for me. They looked out for me. I took a small pay cut, but that allowed me to go over there, and I did not hate my life. And honestly, with all the politics and all the shit that was going on at Marmon, there was always something going on. There was always shit talking. Even with that, the work was kind of fulfilling, especially when we got into a rhythm and I learned the forklift and the stand-up forklift and all the different like machinery. I ended up being pretty good at the job. And there was constant work. And I got along with, you know, a few of the guys there. One guy I really got along with. We would play Smash on break. But that job was not bad. That job was definitely the epitome of pros and cons mixed together. I would honestly give it like a B. Give it a B. Even the way that I left wasn't the best. And just like the turmoil at that job was not the best. But we ended up leaving there to go to Rainham to live with my in-laws again. And then my wife was like, we need to get out of here. Like, I miss New Hampshire. I was like, I miss New Hampshire as well. I miss our old apartment. We need to get back there. So it's kind of the same thing happened with, and I was at Marmon for like 2.5 years, maybe 2 years. It was roughly around that time. 2 years. I was there for 2 years. I started in February, and then I think I left in February. If not a little later. It might have been like March or April or something. But, yeah, maybe like March or April. And then, I would say maybe March, and then we left, and then we lived with my in-laws for like a month. And then the same thing happened. Like, I lined up a job to come back to New Hampshire. So, we got back to New Hampshire. And that's where I'll leave this video. But yeah, I would give Marmon a nice B. Which, if you know me and my stories and whatnot, you might be surprised. But in reflection, I think it was some of the most fulfilling work that I've done because I think I did it well, with pitfalls, of course, but I think that overall, I think I did pretty good there. And once you get good at a job, and like in reflection and when you compare it to other jobs, I think that this job had the fulfillment that the other two jobs that are coming up did not have. So I still have 3 more jobs to talk about. I'm going to combine all these videos into one, and I will make the next video on my way home, and that will conclude this series. But I think this will be like an hour long. So as always, I appreciate you guys, and it'll be weird when these are all fused because you'll get weird little like exits like this. But I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time. Last time we were talking about Marmon, which I would give like a B. And then from Marmon, I went over to a place called Tremco. And like I said, it was kind of the same thing from when I was coming to North Carolina, going to New Hampshire. It was kind of the vice versa, where I was in Mass and then going to New Hampshire. Because we were living with my wife's parents, and we lived there for about a month. My wife was like, I'm not having this. So we decided to move back to the apartment complex, which was really nice, because I remember heading up and going past my apartment complex and being like, man, I really miss that apartment complex. Like, genuinely really miss it. And I did one interview at a press break place, and then I had another interview that fell apart. And then there was a shipping or receiving position, which I did at Marmon, and it was a temp position, temp to hire, you know, of course, if you did a well enough job. And I remember being there, and then went in for the interview, and the interview went well, and I could kind of tell that they were like, you know, you look good, you look like someone that we might hire. But I had to wait a little bit, and then we got the nod, like, you're good to work here. And I was super excited because it was $23 an hour, which was a little bit more than I was making it at Marmon. I was super excited. And then we were able to call back the apartment and get that all settled. We had to do cashier's checks, but we got it worked out, and we were able to bounce back and head back to the apartment complex in Merrimack, and it was fucking awesome. So once we started there, you know, it was kind of crazy work. Marmon was a lot of forklift and a lot of like putting stuff on pallets. So there was definitely a mix between this place and Tremco. Tremco was like sticks, and you had to put them into boxes and then put them onto pallets and then tape up the pallets. And it was kind of, again, the same thing that we did at Marmon, but Marmon, we had like a machine to do it. At Tremco, it was like by hand. You had to use like a tape roller thing, and then you had to bind it with the metal wires and the plastic wires and tape it together. You know, honestly, not a bad job. I did it for like, I didn't do it for too long. I did it for maybe like 5 months with an in-between, which I'll hit on, which started this whole video. But Tremco was not bad. We had, like I said, an hour break. I ended up utilizing that hour to go for a run, to go to Market Basket to grab groceries for the week. It all really ended up working out all right. It was, you know, a dead-end job, but it was a job that was a good transition job. But while I was there, my buddy told me that you get a pay decrease once you get hired full-time, which really brought it down to like $20.50. So it was like a $2 pay cut. Plus that's when benefits would start. So I would be making 18 compared to my 23, which was pretty ridiculous. So I was looking for an out while I was there, which I kind of always do at jobs besides the job I'm at now. But Tremco ended up, you know, like I ended up finding another job, and I forgot what the fuck it was called, but it was another shipping and receiving place, and it was $24 an hour, and I wouldn't have worried about the pay cut or anything. So I switched over. I let work know. I gave them 2 weeks so I could transfer out of there into this new job. And they were okay with it. They were like, sounds good, like, we liked having you, and I left on good terms. So I went to this other job, which started this whole video because I drove by it, and I was like, oh my God, I hated that place. So at first it was okay, but it was weird because they only really did 30-minute break, and they didn't do anything else. And it was very, like, fast-paced, but also, like, a lot to learn that was not, like, regimental. Like, it wasn't what I was used to. Like, Marmon and Tremco was very much like, you're doing this with A, B, and C, while this place was, like, A through fucking M. Like, the possibilities. It was just a lot more. And no product was ever, like, shipped out. There was, like, 3 things that were shipped out the whole week I was there. And I'm used to, like, pallets upon pallets, like at least 15. And then at Marmon, it was like, oh my God, it was like 60 or 70 huge wire pallets heading out. So, like, trucks were always there, unloading, loading. And this place was like, oh, here's a truck. And then, like, Tuesday, here's a truck. And then Thursdays, here's a truck. And we're unloading, like, 3 things. So, huge difference. And, yeah, it was a huge difference between the two. And and right here, I bet someone's gonna say something. The person gave me the okay to park in the handicap, but you know how people are. They'll probably be like, hey man, like, what are you doing in that parking spot? Always gotta say something. Someone's gonna say something. But I remember being there. I remember, like, genuinely hating my life, like, being like, oh my God, I miss Tremco. Like, I can't believe I'm saying this, because, like, Tremco was, like, a mediocre job, but I just remember being like, yeah, but I had an hour break, and I was able to, like, kind of relax, and I was able to, like, head to work without any, like, thing weighing on my shoulder. So I remember being there and just thinking about Tremco and being like, yeah, maybe I'll take a pay decrease, but, like, I'll still have a job. Well, at this point, like, I can't see myself being here anymore. So I remember being there for a week and just going right back to Tremco. And Tremco and Allison, my instinct staffing, was like, yeah, we're just like, that sounds good. Like, we'll just have to do a few more things, but we can get you right back into Tremco. So that was really my, like, lesson in, like, the grass is not always greener, and like, always leave on a good note. So I left on a good note. I went back to Tremco. At the time, I was finishing my degree in psychology with substance use, with a bachelor's. So I was nearing the end of that. And at that point, I was like, I really need to look for a job in the field. I really need to start my career. So while I was at Tremco, my buddy left kind of on bad terms. And then I remember they ended up, like, not really liking me as much. And it wasn't really, like, too much more. It was just, like, a little bit of, like, edge to the things they were saying. But I remember they were definitely picking on the 2 other people way more. Remember there was a guy named Marco, and I forgot the other guy's name. But they did not like them too. So it was just kind of, like, not the best place, because HR wasn't a thing. It was, like, all in-house, like, through the managers and supervisors. It was very strange, and not just strange that they weren't, like, HR trained. So then I had an interview. When I got my degree to do peer support / case management. And the first place that answered was like, you're gonna have to drive a lot. And there was just kind of like, you have to be in office. It just seemed like kind of like the roofing job, like where it was like per diem a little bit more. And I was like, I'll think about it, but it was like less money than I was making at Tremco. So I was like, nah, I'll think about that one. And Tremco, I would honestly rate. I would rate slightly lower than Marmon, but I would probably give it a B-. Well, I would probably give Marmon a B. And then I remember I applied to the job that I have now, And I remember they reached out to me. I was like, I'll just kind of throw it out there. And they reached out to me, and they were like, "Can you do an interview?" I was, of course I can. And I went in, and there was, and I don't want to detail too much about the job I have now, for obvious reasons. But there was Doggy there, and the staff was incredibly nice, and they were like, "Yeah, this is what it's expected. How does this sound?" And I was like, "It sounds awesome," and the room was beautiful, and I had no idea what the job was going to entail because it was so just out of the ordinary of what I was used to. And they took me into the interview. There was like 5 or 6 people there, and it really went nice. Afterwards they were like, "We loved your interview." Obviously that they hired me, but I was just so like, no way am I going to get this job. It's just too good to be true. And I don't even have my degree yet. I was still like 2 weeks from getting it. And then they gave me a call back like the next day, and they were like, "Yeah, we want you. And originally the pay was like 23, but I negotiated to get it up to 25. And it was salary, which I never had before either. So the money was good. The location's good. The stress is kind of like vice versa of most other jobs I've had, like physical stress and like coworker stress. This one's more about like the job stress. But I ended up saying okay, and I've been there ever since. So I've been here for about 8 months. Again, Tremco was cool. They were like, "We can't take you back this time," which isn't a problem. I don't think about going back. But they're like, since, and I was like, I understand. I left there in a good note. I left my workstation the cleanest. I like had it painted. It was crazy. Like just had like the painters painted to make it look really beautiful. It was weird, but like I left it nicer than I got it, and that made me feel pretty good. And then I got my degree in psychology, and now I'm getting I'm getting another pay raise because the degree is gonna hit. And I get a new title. So yeah, this job that I'm at now would probably be my second favorite job, even with the cons of the drive. No job I think will beat that that flight operations job getting ready for deployment. I did that for 5-6 months, and it was the easiest work I've ever done. It was getting me ready for deployment, which I couldn't ask for anything better. It had a 2-hour break. The work was so ridiculously easy, and everyone was just kind of like, "Yeah, man, just like if you ever need to like do anything, just let us know and we got you covered." So honestly, I'd probably give that an A minus, the Westfield job. I'd probably give this job I have now a B plus. But this would probably be my second favorite job. So all in all, let's rank them from the worst to the best. So the worst is the roofing job. It had no pros at all. No pros at all. I think the pro would come if you were good at the sales part of it, but no pros at all. So best choice roofing, number 1, pyramid scam, and just hated my life. Number 2 would probably be that nuclear job, because it had real safety concerns. It was a 3rd position job, and the job was very hot, no AC, in North Carolina. Even if it was 3rd shift, you had to wear all this bullshit, all the safety protocol. You couldn't have your phone in there. You couldn't listen to music. I couldn't imagine working there. Seemed very out of the ordinary from what I was used to. 3rd worst is probably High Point, like the mental health facility. Mistreatment of the kids, mistreatment of the patients, terrible hours. The only pro was it was close to home, so it's not, it's not the worst. Next one would probably be, man, I forgot what they were called, but it's a shipping and receiving job that I did for a week. Just really dead-end job with no like good feeling for myself. The drive wasn't bad, but again, I was only there for a week, so it can't really go higher or lower. Next starts getting into the jobs that I didn't necessarily hate. So I'd probably put at number 5, I would probably put Farmer's Outlet. I was a bum, but I met my wife. It was close to home. Hours weren't bad. But I was a bum. So it was like the time, and I was 23 and I was working there. It just did not feel good. Number 6 would probably be Jordan's Furniture. Honestly, the boss was a dick. But other than that, my coworkers weren't bad. It was just kind of like a weird place that I was in my life. Definitely a transition period before I met my wife, hanging out with my buddies a lot, drinking, and had no ambition. Quit that job because of school. Big mistake. I should have done both, but I just didn't have the drive or ambition at the time. Number 7, and sorry if I get the numbers messed up. Number 7, I'd probably go senior, which is surprising for me, but senior, I was living in Taunton / Rainham / Stanton Randolph. That was terrible. I hated living in Mass. I was there for 4 years. It was my longest job. I got into verbal fights with people at work, but then my coworkers were the best coworkers I've ever had. The work wasn't bad until I went over to the other machine where I had to stamp metal that was to diagram pieces, and it was quick work that you could cut yourself, you could dent the product. Oh man, you had to have everything on the machine perfect. A lot of drama at that job, not as much as Marmon, and I was probably equally as good with the coiler slitter as I was with the forklift over at Marmon. But I lived in Middleborough, Stoughton, Rainham, all that bullshit, Taunton. It was just bleh. I hate living in Mass. And I think if I lived in New Hampshire and I had that job, I think it would rank higher than Marmon. So I think I'm at number 8, which would be Marmon. Oh no. So number 8 would probably be Tremco. It really didn't have any cons necessarily. Didn't have AC, when we were working. And the job was pretty easy. I mean, it was labor inducing, but we had an hour break. I really did a good job working out there. I did a good job drinking water. I had a good routine going for myself. I just wish I was better at the job and kind of in a better mindset about what I was doing. But it is also where the YouTube channel started, so that was pretty cool too. Yeah, so, and we lived in Merrimack, and it was transitioned where we moved back, and it was a highlight. So everything in New Hampshire is kind of a highlight. So I just love it in New Hampshire. And I think that my buddy's coming out from his appointment. Maybe not. He might be headed back. I don't know. But yeah, I think that's number 8. So number 9 is Marmon. Marmon really is pros and cons. So much drama in the workplace, but I remember being incredibly goofy in shipping and receiving, and once I was in shipping and receiving, it was pretty set what the work was. It was fulfilling work. So that's I think number 8 is, yeah, either 8 or, oh my god, Hannafords too. God damn it, I'm losing track. Hannafords gotta be 6. So Marmon's number 9. And Hannafords the first job. Doesn't really, it's whatever. Number 9 is Marmon. And yeah, looking back at it, I don't have such venom. I have a lot more I was part of it, and when I was part of it, there was so much good and so many funny stories and so much fucking humor and bullshit going on. I have so many stories at that job that are ridiculous that I would never be able to get away with at any other job. So that's that job in my history. I hope everyone has a job like that, for what it teaches you and for how much of yourself you can be. Yeah, so don't have that venom anymore. Those people were all right. They all had their own issues. And yeah. Number 10 is the job that I have now. Commute's great. The work is good. Like the work is good. It's fulfilling. Probably the most fulfilling job I have. Sometimes I have like imposter syndrome where I feel like I'm not doing like I'm not doing everything that I need to do just because like it's so out of my realm. I'm new to it. Luckily I've been there like 8 months. I'm learning. I got a certificate while I've been here. I've done a lot to help. I can make these videos all the time. I can go to my office and just chill. I have an office. Come on now. I mean, how can you beat that? I get paid for gas. If I have a day off, they're totally fine with it. So that's amazing too. Yeah, I mean, this job is easily one of the best. I think this falls at number 10 or 11. Maybe I've lost count, but 10 or 11, no doubt about it. I couldn't ask for kind of a better job besides my top one. And my top one is getting ready for deployment. I was making the most money I've ever made. I was making like 27 bucks an hour. Granted, with gas money, you better bring that down to like 23 bucks an hour because of how much I was driving. But I love that job. There's still some times that I miss it because there was only improvement and more money to come if I stayed. But it was just kind of like a temp position. But yeah, if they had an open position, it would have just amounted to more money. I mean, there was a guy there who was making 45 bucks an hour, and I didn't see him work one bit. I got along with him, and he covered for me, but he did not work at all. He was on profile. He was on profile for like 2 or 3 years, and he still went to the gym. It was like crazy. But I was like, how much do you make? And he's like 45 bucks an hour. And like insurance was all covered because he was in like TRICARE, and it was awesome. So the only con to that job was the drive. Other than that, it was the best job I ever had. No doubt about it. I would give that, even with the cons, I would give that an A-. I would give the job I'm at now a B+. If it wasn't for the drive, that job would be an A+. But it was the drive that really deterred it. And for this job that I have now, it's really just practice, training, and getting better at the job that I think will increase it to like an A-. But yeah, that's all my work history. Again, just to run through it, and let's get these numbers right. Number one, so the top will be 11 or 12 or whatever it is. So number one is Best Choice Roofing. That was the worst job. Number two was the nuclear place. That's number 2. Number 3 is High Point. Number 4 was that random ass ship and receiving job that I had. Number 5 was FO. Number 6 would be Hannafords. Number 7 would be Jordan's. Number 8 would be Senior. Number 9 would be Tremco. Number 10 would be Marmon. Number 11 would be the job that I have now. And number 12 would be working in the National Guard full time. And I think that's all my work history, 12 jobs, over a work history of about 17 years. I started when I was 16. I was a sophomore. So I was a freshman. It might have been like I was a freshman. And I started that summer. It was one of the two. I either started that summer of freshman year, or I started the summer of sophomore. But I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time. I did so much talking today. Like I said, with my job history, so this is just a continuation of that video where I'm going to just add it to it. So this will kind of be a weird that whole video is gonna be weird. It's gonna be weird, like just cuts and stoppage, you know. But I, you know, to end that video, because I don't think anyone's gonna watch fucking hour and a half pretty much of me just talking about job history. So I don't think they're gonna get to this point anyway. But again, my videos are just like journal entries. That's like, it's just supposed to be me talking and me like talking about how the day went and different things that I want to talk about, because I'd rather talk than listen to the voices in my head. Like, that is literally what this is for. Sometimes it helps more, you know, sometimes this day will help more. Sometimes I just do it because I want to get into the rhythm of it, and I want to get into the habit of it, and I don't want to end that habit. So kind of like, it all depends on how I feel in those days. So when I talk about my job history, it's not really like supposed to be like, this is like always that this job was a failure, or this job, it was most of the time the job wasn't for me. My brain couldn't comprehend it. My brain, like at a lot of jobs, I survived because they like my personality. I don't really understand it, to be honest with you. I find myself kind of annoying. I find myself talking too much. I find myself either lying, or I find myself making up half-truths or not telling the whole truth. I find myself doing something along the lines that, like, I'm always just kind of confused on why people like me. But I think that's a common, like, thing that humans do, is they find, you know, faults in themselves, and they don't understand why they're successful. But when I look at my job history, a lot of it, you know, if there's like a percentage mark to everything, then you're gonna get percentages. If I'm adding it up to 100 in percentages, and each job that I've had, each one will vary in its percentage. And again, it's me talking, it's not gonna make sense. But like Hannafords, it was me being like not fully invested into the job. Like, I knew that it was bagging and cashiering, and I was making like $9 an hour. So I wasn't fully invested in that job. I didn't give my best foot forward, but I did give a foot and effort enough to where I wouldn't get complaints. I never called out. And I did the job just fine. You know, I was a quick bagger. I was good at the fucking carriages. And I was a good cashier. I was one of the fastest on both, you know. But I didn't put my best foot forward to be like going above and beyond for the job. And to make myself employee of the month or anything like that. So like, each job will have a factor like that. Hannafords was not something where I had to use my personality skills to keep the job. Like, where I was deficient in a way, and then I needed to make up for it in my personality. That's kind of what I'm trying to say, is like, mechanically, I'm not that smart. Mechanically, I don't really understand how to do some things. Or like how pieces go together and work together. So, like at Jordan's, again, that was kind of a surprise for me, because I was able to mechanically use, I'm good at that. I can, if something requires like the day in, day out of doing something, I can kind of master that. And of course, there's always going to be someone better than me, but like, I would say that I pretty much made the standard for how to like at that Jordan's job. And I'm kind of going chronologically, oh my god, through each job. So like at Jordan's, switching the batteries and using that using that machine, I ended up getting really good at that because it was doing the same thing and mastering the same thing. And when I do something all the time, I find out, the shortcuts and the meta of doing that thing. So I can become really good at that. Like when I play a multiplayer game, I'm never the best at doing something. I'm always I'm really good at understanding the mechanisms of something simple and making it work for me. I'm good at that. So like Jordans, I was good at that, but I wasn't good at following directions and doing exactly what they told me to do, or vice versa. I come from the Army background where I'm like, I need to be told what to do exactly. And at Jordans, they were like, well, you're gonna have to kind of do this at this time and dangle this, and you can't be doing stuff for everyone because you have your job to do. That's where my boss got really conflicted, because I had friends there that I would do stuff for, and my boss was like, no, you got to stick to your job and do this. And I was conflicted. So my boss didn't go around it the right way by calling me names and vice versa, but I understood later on where he was coming from as far as you need to do your job and not care for what other people need from you. So yeah, I can always rationalize at jobs where my faults took place and then where my pros were taken advantage of. So I know that at many jobs I have several cons that I believe could get me fired if it weren't for some of my pros that made up for that. So at sub jobs, I am very deficient at. At High Point, the medical, or at FO, I don't think I had any cons there besides my bumness and drinking and not taking care of myself and really making my person made me bad at the job. So the job's easy, but I made it more difficult by my personal issues. So mechanically and everything, very simple job. It's me getting in my own way that made that job harder than it was supposed to be. At High Point, it was having too much care in the job that made it really difficult, because they were getting treated very poorly, being tackled and being grabbed and just weird circumstances, and just having mental health issues. I could relate to them maybe a little too much to be like, dude, when you do the same thing, but then at the job you needed those parameters, and a lot of times I wouldn't want those parameters because I'm like, dude, I'm not helping them at all. I'm just keeping them here in a very unsafe, unhealthy environment. What is the point of all this? But that maybe that helped some people. Maybe the confines and the rules and the structure, and honestly the place to live was very important for people who are homeless. So again, you gotta rationalize everything. At the flight operations, I think it was simple work, but it got complicated with the coordinates, and it got complicated with exact measures on things and the exact way to do it. There was a skill ceiling to flight operations. To be better at flight operations, you have to understand how mechanically planes work, how often they have to refuel, what is entailed in a Black Hawk and the crews, and what do they bring along. There's a lot to get better at flight operations. And at that time I didn't have to deal with I would have to deal with refueling, but I didn't have to deal with drone strikes merged with Apaches, merged with medevac, merged with everything else going on. It was very much just refuel them, keep coordinates, keep tracking of them, keep on the radio, and that's all you need to do. But in order to get better, as I saw with deployment, you had to understand so much more, that I think there's levels to it that might have confined me in the long run. But at the time, and being a specialist, not in that sergeant rank, I think I fulfilled my duties pretty well especially knowing that I trained the next group, and they trusted me with training the next group. So I think I did decent enough to have that trust in line in me. Senior is probably the biggest one where I think I would have been fired, because once I stepped away from coiling and slitting and the press operator and went to the next level, my brain did not comprehend how the machines worked, because they had to have certain air, they had to have certain like blueprints for each job merged with how the machine worked with each job, and each machine working different with each job. So that was a lot for me to handle, and I didn't like my time then, and I knew that they liked me enough and knew I was good enough at the other job that they were able to put me back over there, so to keep me. But obviously, if that wasn't the case and they didn't like me, they would have fired me, because they're like, you can't do this job that well, so we can't keep you. But since they liked me and my personality, and they dealt with me over the years, they said, we'll put you over here where you flourish. So that, that worked out for me. But that's another thing with my job, where like I knew where my confines were and my pros and cons and how everything worked together. And that job I got lucky at, because they worked for me. The Best Choice Roofing, or the roofing company, I had no pros at that. I did not like knocking. I did not like confrontation. I didn't like talking to people. I didn't like selling. I didn't like getting on the roofs. I wasn't good at it. I'm not a salesman like my dad is. I could not sell anything to anyone. Maybe, I don't know. But roofing with a congested area, I think that the congestion of our market really flooded the Wilmington area, to where nobody wanted to fucking sell roofs, and they got fucking 10 knocks a day, so they were all done with it. Who knows? But I knew that my bosses were definitely not selling what they were at one time, when it was flourishing, kind of before I got there, maybe 2 years prior, when the market was flourishing for some reason. Maybe it was new, or maybe the assurances worked with the roofing company. Something happened to where it flourished for a while, and then when I got there, nobody was selling roofs, and it was this weird little snake oil. It was a weird job, but they kept anyone. So even if you didn't sell roofs or anything, they didn't care. They had their minions out there spreading the gospel. So that's what was different between me keeping that job. It was me saying, I can't do this anymore. Versus them saying they don't need me. Of course they didn't need me. They only needed me for the numbers and putting the advertisements out there. After that, Marmon, they liked me over at shipping and receiving. I did good over there. It was basic work that was a little complicated on the shipping side of it, but the receiving side was pretty easy. Packaging was pretty easy. It got complicated with the trucks, dispatching them with the dimensions and making sure everything was correct, especially when it came to specialty wire and sending out, a pallet that may weigh 10,000 pounds, making sure that that is correctly dimensioned, weight, with the right label, going to the right place. So all that got pretty complicated, but I was pretty decent at that. It was the politics, and that is something that saved me and hurt me. Like, we were all part of it, so no one could do anything about it, and nobody was going to take that next step until the end of that job, where someone did take the next step to kind of push other people out. So that's kind of what happened. Everyone had this agreement, like, we're all kind of not the best people, and that hurts me to say, because you always want to be the best person in the room. Like, you always want to be a nice person, a good person. But at this job, I don't think anyone was necessarily good. I think everyone had deficiencies, everyone was negative, and we all made this agreement, like, we all kind of toxic. And then, but everyone had this thing that kind of was like, you could get fired for. whether or not you'd be messing up on a job or a personal thing. Like, everyone had a reason that they could easily get fired. So nobody went that next step, but then someone did, and then it just hurt the whole thing. But you have to take accountability for what your part was in that, and that I could have done the same thing to this person. Any day, if I had a bad day, I would, who knows if I would have done the same thing. I was just about to say I would have. So it's like, who knows what I would have done? I didn't do it, but who knows really, Tremco, it was shipping and receiving. I was out of there. I was fine at the job. And I don't think anything really held me back. I ended up learning all the things to do. I could have forklift. And then at that other shipping and receiving job, there was a lot that I just didn't really understand. But maybe over time I would have. I mean, I was only there for a week. But I just wanted to give you an overlap of kind of what I was trying to say, the aftermath of making that list, and why everything kind of going deeper into why each job, personally, in my mind, why it might not work out or it would have worked out. But yeah, I just want to give an end cap to that. And this video should be like an hour and a half, hour 20 minutes. So if you watch all of it, oh my God, you know my work history. But good luck on that one. And as always, I appreciate you all, and I can't wait to see you next time.